All right. Hello, 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 everybody. I am Greyhawk Grognard, aka Joe Block. We have with us some of the creative team behind the new Living Greyhawk, if I'm allowed to use that phrase, the Greyhawk Living campaign called Legends of Greyhawk. We have John, Savannah, and Matt, and I will let you guys introduce yourselves. John, you're up first. Make it quick and make it punchy.
Sure. John Christian. I am the Highfolk regional story lead for Legends of Greyhawk, working at Baldwin Games. Savannah.
Great. Savannah?
I am Savannah Houston McIntyre. I'm the creative director of Baldwin Games, overseeing the Legends of Greyhawk content.
Great. And Matt?
I'm the newbie of the group, at least when it comes to organized play. My name is Matt Dunn. I am the assistant story lead for the Highfolk region.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on tonight. Everybody knows, I'm Greyhawk Grognard. I love all things Greyhawk, and that is why they're here. I am probably going to get some static because they're using the 5th edition rules, but I don't care because they're doing it in Greyhawk. So that's the important thing for me. So I just want to get an idea because I'm still kind of fuzzy on this, on the whole Legends of Greyhawk thing in general. Because I know it's a living campaign, and I know it's kind of like the modern living Greyhawk like we had under the RPGA. What was the genesis of this? Did WotC approach Baldman Games, or did you come to them with a proposal, or what was the genesis of this whole thing?
So our president, Dave, actually approached Wizards of the Coast with this plan. And lucky for us, they were excited about it. And Chris Tulloch started spinning wheels at Wizards of the Coast to get resources. And here we are today.
Oh, that is really cool. Now, you're doing this at conventions. And I know your first one was like in Chicago or something.
Yeah, MagicCon in Chicago earlier this year.
How many cons are you guys doing in a year with this? Just
I had to get my abacus out to count them all up. There are quite a few.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Oh boy.
Yeah, Gen Con, Origins, PAX,
Page.
Page. Not with Baldman.
Yes, we're doing Page this year, I
Page,
believe. Yeah.
Okay, because I'll be there too, so I'll get to meet hopefully a couple of you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Winter Fantasy is a big one in February because we'll have, I think, the most Greyhawk content of any of the cons this year.
It'll be coming out of your ears at Winter Fantasy. Yeah.
Yes. And then Origins.
Don't mind me.
Yeah, but in addition to just like the actual physical premieres for conventions, there's also the Legends of Greyhawk material that Baldwin Games is responsible for creating will also be premiering not only at the weekend in Highfolk, which was this weekend, but also at future virtual weekends, which are monthly events that they do online.
Oh, great. Do let me know about those, and I can push them on my channel.
Yeah, we'd love that. Thank you.
So please, by all means. I'm a big promoter of all things Greyhawk. When they opened it up on DM's Guild, I've started doing reviews of every single Greyhawk product that the fan community puts out, just to pump them up and get the word out that, hey, there's this cool thing here. So, I don't discriminate, even though I'm not a big fan of 5e, and I'm certainly not a big fan of WotC. I don't discriminate when it comes to Greyhawk stuff. So I'm happy to help anybody who's boosting my favorite setting. So give me an idea, Matt. I'm going to guess you're the youngster here. What did you start with game wise?
I'm actually probably older than you think, but I started with 2nd edition.
Okay.
And 2nd edition was live at the time. So I inherited from my cousin who was older a bunch of like the original Brown book, Greyhawk book. And then started going backwards and purchasing a bunch of them. Like I have most of the major Greyhawk boxes that I got in real time, like Greyhawk Wars and From the Ashes at the time that they were published. So yeah, back in the day.
Savannah, same question. What's your gaming background here in terms of D&D?
So I started in 3rd edition.
Okay.
Yeah, that was popular at the time I was a teen.
This is great. I get to say this. I have dice that are older than you.
Yes, you probably do. Yes. And just fell in love, and it's become my life.
John?
Yeah, so for me, I have a weird entryway into D&D in that my buddy and I played in middle school. We started with AD&D, but he didn't know how to run it. I didn't know how to play it. He just had all of his brother's old stuff in a trunk, and so he had a bunch of Greyhawk maps, but he didn't know what Greyhawk was, and so he was just making it up off the cuff while we were listening to a lot of The Doors at the time. So I've got a lot of a lot of nostalgia hits whenever I hear some Riders on the Storm in particular. But I came up in AD&D, but really didn't start playing in earnest until around second edition. But I've played through every single edition. I've gone back and played old like the old white box edition of OD&D too. So I played every single edition, but I kind of started in AD&D, but really started in second.
I love the Freudian slip. You started playing in earnest.
In earnest, yes, thank you. Yes, good correction.
And just so we're on the same playing table, I started with Holmes Basic in 1977 and went to, because I got the little brown books, I got the white box. I couldn't understand it at all. I'd been playing war games for a couple of years, like Avalon Hill and SPI. Got that, couldn't understand it all. Got Holmes Basic, it all clicked, and played that for summer, and then went on to first edition.
That's great.
Okay, so there's different regions, or are there just areas of the living campaign that you're emphasizing at any given time? How does that, because I know the old RPGA, they had, if you lived in these states, you were in this region and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
How are you handling the geographical divide in the finesse?
So we are a premier organizer, and there's 3 in total. So we all have realms that fall under our control. But Baldwin Game has the most. So we have a Highfolk, John and Matt here. We have Old Ferrand, and then we have the domain of Greyhawk as well.
Mm-hmm. What are the other 2, if you don't mind my asking?
Games Conclave has I'm gonna get this backwards. Maybe one of you 2 can help me out. Is it
Lordship?
They have Lordship of the Isles?
Lordship of the Isles,
and is Ernst their other one?
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I know the other 2. Yeah.
Yes. And then the other regions. Oh goodness.
West Coast Adventurers. I'm gonna forget the G.
Guild.
Whatever. Guild.
I think, yeah.
And has Wild Coast and Bandit Kingdoms.
Yes.
Bandit Kingdoms. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
So there may be more premier organizers in the future, but I think that's what you can expect for the first year to year and a half going forward.
Yeah, so they've carved out those specific regions inside of the central finesse and elsewhere, really.
Now, is there how much cross information is there between the 3 of you? Like, do things in Highfolk, in your Highfolk, affect what happens in Ernst or something, or is it kind of insular and kind of?
No, it's entirely possible. So the creative directors have a channel where we can pass information and requests, and then all of us report kind of our summaries, our what we call marks of prestige. So these are story beats that can carry forward into an internal document that Wizards distributes to all of us. So we do have access and insight to what's going on at these other regions.
Okay. And you guys are set in 576 or
That's
591?
Yes.
576. Yeah.
Okay, so you're rewinding the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a big bugaboo for me with the RPGA Living Greyhawk. What is the canonicity status of what you guys are doing?
Oh boy. Yeah, so the directive is anything that's in the DMG for the 2024 is canon. Anything outside of that is something that is interpretable to the premier organizer and what parts of canon that they want to adopt, right? So anything that's for us, at least in Highfolk, our the philosophy that we took was anything that was 576 and back, completely canon. Right, or for as canon as we can make it, right?
Right.
576 and forward, starting at the Battle of Emerald Meadows, something happened, right? So think about it almost like a Kelvin timeline, where everything else that happened before, after that, that's all still totally legit. Nobody's touching any of that stuff. But there's this deviant timeline, so to speak, that's happened to where the player choices that occurred at the Battle of Emerald Meadows, specifically at MagicCon earlier this year, they caused a schism or a splintering, right? And so this splintering is this new route that we're going down, at least within Highfolk. And of course, Savannah, correct any of that if I'm off base at all.
No, because I think as far as future material goes, with part of being a living, breathing campaign is the players need to be able to have an impact. So we have key decision choices that happen throughout the story where the, characters might have a chance to lead things down the same path, but they could really throw us a curveball and things go wild. Which is again part of the magic of seeing a new group of players explore and propel Greyhawk forward.
Now it's interesting you mentioned Battle of Emerald Meadows because that was 569, not 576.
That's correct.
You're hitting
No,
my
you're
butt
right.
here with this. And the reason I know it so well is because I've actually been running a Battle of Emerald Meadows miniatures war game at conventions.
Oh, okay.
Which
cool.
is I like it, and it's been really well received. So that's why I'm kind of and if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know I'm kind of focused on Temple of Elemental Evil. So how does because you mentioned Emerald Meadows, how did that? What was the deal with that?
So we had a preview event, which was the Battle of Emerald Meadows, written by the amazing Will Doyle. And players came in knowing that they were probably going to die. And that the character they brought in was not to be used in the campaign, but they received a reward that they could then pass on to an ancestor or a friend or, an apprentice. So it gave them a little bit of a boon moving forward in the story.
Okay, great. Yeah. And that's actually how I approach Living Greyhawk. And a lot of people, every time I mention it, it's like, yeah, it's in its own parallel continuity. And I get so much static from people about that because they're very protective of it. But I'm pleased with the attitude that you guys are taking about the continuity. It's its own thing, like the Kelvin timeline or Earth 818 or whatever. So that's some
great. Of that philosophy is actually born out of for some of my history, at least. I operated and led the storyline for the Dragonlance content that Baldwin Games was responsible for as a part of the Adventurers League organized play, right? And so for me, I'm a deep Dragonlance nerd. Like it runs super deep, right? And my thinking is like whatever Margaret and Tracy say is gospel, and everything else is just Kinder tales, that kind of stuff too. So whenever I had this put upon me to write Dragonlance content during the War of the Lance, it was incredibly daunting because I have such a deep love for the setting. I didn't want to hurt I didn't want to make anybody else mad because I was that guy too, right? So I carried that over into this, and I think a lot of us do, right? Most, if not all of us do, about considering the fact that the fandom is there for a reason. They held the torch. They've kept the lamp lit for the past several decades. And so just trying to be mindful and respectful of that, at the same time trying to create something that's new and fresh that brings in a new audience and helps them fall in love with the setting too.
That's exactly my thought. If it grows Greyhawk, if it brings in new fans, then I'm in favor of it.
Right. Yeah.
We do have a question from the audience. Will any of the adventures or other materials developed for Legends of Greyhawk be available for purchase or posted on free as like a PDF?
They will be available for purchase. We can't share too many details about that, other than the fact that they will be available in Q1, starting with the content we released within the last year. So you can expect the Hamlet trilogy and Greyhawk to go up first, and the timeline will be kind of be wibbly wobbly as Wizards works on their magic of getting everything out.
I'm guessing that it'll be on DM's Guild or Drive Through or one of those.
I would say to watch our social media for details about release, and our website legendsofgreyhawk.com. All will become clear in time.
Feel free. This is why we're here. The plug stuff. And we have another question. Was Dan Ayub involved at all?
Not that I'm aware of, right? So I know that at least not for the Highfolk stuff. I can only really kind of speak to that for myself.
Yes. So he wasn't involved directly. I'm sure he could have been involved in the background in the Wizards conversations we're not a part of. So unfortunately, we can't speak too much on that front.
And for folks who don't know, he's the vice president in charge of D&D at WotC, basically. So
he brought Margaret. Speaking of Dragonlance again, he brought Margaret and Tracy back to the home offices, which is that was quite a feat based on where that was left off.
Yeah, I know there was a little friction there for a while about
something going on there. Yeah,
something was going on, and I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs, but yeah, I'm actually a big Dragonlance fan myself, so I never really played in it, but I read a ton of the novels and had all the modules and stuff. And in fact, when I went out to TSR to interview for a job, which I did not get, it was like 1989, 90. They gave me as a consolation prize, they gave me a box set of the Minotaur Kingdom on the other side of the planet.
That's
like
cool.
They just like plucked it off the shelf in the warehouse as we're going on a tour, and here, take this.
They were probably trying to get rid of all of it.
I thought it was great. I love
awesome.
that map. It's just phenomenal.
It's great.
But yeah, it was. So I was a big Dragonlance fan back in the day. The novels, at least, especially the first series of novels, are just phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Although it's arguable that they kind of nudged D&D into a different direction, story wise. But so give me an idea of kind of the creative process. In terms of where do the kernels come from for the ideas for the adventures that you're running? How, to use a loaded term, how railroady are they versus how sandboxy? What's the design philosophy behind the adventures that you guys are producing for this?
Yeah, the philosophy is really defined or revolves around the play and the kind of play that you're going to expect. It's organized play, so most often, especially if it's a convention, you're going to sit down with people that you don't know. You're going to sit down and you're going to play between 3 to 4 hours of play, and it needs to be contained and very tight, right? So when we design an adventure, the adventure needs to have a beginning, middle, and end that takes 3 to 4 hours to complete, right? And you're typically trying to write for between 5 to 7 players that are at a table, depending, right? So a lot of the designs revolve around that. We have templates and style guides and all those things that we've adopted from previous editions, specifically from Adventurers League, and now we have some new guidelines that we follow ourselves right now. But when it comes to the actual creative process, it really does revolve around we have to tell a tight story to where there's something that's satisfying that happens during it that you could accomplish within a 3 to 4 hours frame.
Do you guys have like a writer's Bible or?
Yes, we have a legendarium that is now almost over 20 pages long of just Matt and I have developed it over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, really. And it is when we onboard a new writer, they have access to it and they can see essentially, here are all of our thoughts. Here's where you are. Here's where you are. Here's where we're going. And then try to bring them up to speed. And then Matt has been my lore nerd muse, honestly, has been fielded a lot of the questions and has done a lot of the deep dive research and into there you go.
Yes,
Lamar Glantz.
exactly
Lamar Glantz has been one of his best friends. I've done my own for sure, but Matt has just got like a sponge for that. So Matt, I'll let you talk a little bit more about the legendarium if you want to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, even just like I was talking about my background, like when I was bought those like the Greyhawk boxes, they were not for me actually to play in Greyhawk. Usually for that point, I was just like consuming the lore that was there, and that was true from like the box sets even to like the Dragon Magazine 1 map, like what's going on in the West area. So like just naturally, that's sort of what I do. And so with Highfolk,
don't get me started on Western Auric.
Yes, I know. There's some part of me that wished it had actually sort of come to this sort of full fruition, but I guess like leaving that map just sort of undetailed is nice.
Wait until next year. I might have something that will Something
Okay.
might be coming out on DM's
I'll
Guild.
be very excited. Okay, so we'll park that over there for a moment. So in Highfolk, we basically went through, again, as John was talking about, like kind of the core of what we know to be sort of true, and also what Savannah and team have kind of built out from the larger story arc for like the sort of Central Finesse kind of area, and then went through and sort of figured out what sort of story beats we were looking at, and then also what actually did exist, particularly things that are like kind of still WotC like stories that took place later, like the Marklands being a great example, and how we could think about in this kind of Kelvin timeline effect, like reflecting some of that. So like, for example, in sort of the original Marklands books, they're talking about the Lord of the Elves, like, and the King of the Elves, basically in the Highfolk area. His name is Kashavan Tamarel. So this is at this point probably not spoilery. He does show up in our sort of adventures. Like he will be a core character within sort of a lot of our stories, but he's not Lord of the Elves of Highfolk, at least not yet. He may have aspirations to that, but it's sort of more, we're able to tell a different story of like what actually happens to him and the region in a kind of through a mirror version of what was seen in the Marklands and seen in Living Greyhawk. So yeah, we've been building this kind of legendarium that allows us to basically give the Easter eggs to people who are coming back from Living Greyhawk and kind of now playing this and can see, oh, I know who that is, but maybe I don't. But then also it's in a way that also starts to build it with kind of breadcrumbs that like new players can also start to see the new story evolve.
That was actually going to be one of my questions, is how deeply are you tying the lore into the adventures? Because it's one thing to just, name drop stuff, but there are, historical currents, and there's tensions that are set up in the original gold box and the folio that are carried through in later products. That can have a real impact on things. So how deeply are you integrating the lore into the adventures that you're doing?
As much as we can, right? As much as we can within the confines of the page count, we'll say, right? Because again, in convention play, you can't give every adventure can't have 50 to 100 pages of content in it for all this additional context you want to be able to give. You can give your dungeon masters, hey, take a look at like this look at the gold box for additional details on this. Go and look at the Greyhawk Adventures for that, so that they can pull those in themselves in order to embellish and in order to fill things out. But at the same time, well, I'll look at like the third adventure in our series right now. There's quite a bit of additional context that our author really they went nuts. They're like, they wanted to make sure that you understood what this settlement or this area, like where this came from, and there's quite a lot of juicy lore stuff that's in there. But again, it really is based on the limits of what you the content restraints that you have with how much detail you can put into it. You have to focus on the adventure, you have to focus on the beats, and then you have a lot of sidebars about like giving additional context to the different scenes that are in there, like where this is coming from and where that's coming from.
And Savannah does this then at the sort of macro level, like thinking as you're like the lore pieces as they fit, not just in Highfolk, but also across all the different sort of arcs that are happening.
Yes, for meta plot and kind of weaving things together. And I'm also the lead designer of the domain of Greyhawk. So I know there, there's a difference between how much you want to give the player and how much you need to give the DM so they can really do the lore justice. So I rely a lot on what I call lore sidebars, where it's outside of the text of the adventure, but there's a sidebar that says, hey, this is who Lady Julene or Prince Thrommel is. This is a summary of what the Battle of Emerdy Meadows was. So as they're playing NPCs in the adventure, if they have someone coming in who has that knowledge because either they're coming back or they just, love the setting and delve deep, the DM can represent that.
Please tell me that Thrommel is not really a vampire, and you're going with the original and not return to Temple of Elemental Evil.
Well, we've rewound the clock, so anything could happen at Winter Fantasy, which is where the next Perond adventures will be.
That hit one of my buttons right there when you. So what's that? Where do you see this going in terms of not only what Baldman Games is doing, but the whole Legends of Greyhawk thing in general is going? Do you see this turning into, an RPGA type thing where the entire Flyness is covered and there's kind of like a meta plot and things are planned out? Or I know you don't have any insight into what WotC's plans are in that regard, but what are your aspirations for it?
That's a Savannah question for sure.
Yeah, I would. I would say I would like to see it be a long, living, breathing campaign where, 5 years down the road, players are still able to shape the world and watch it grow. WotC so far has embraced it, and I hope we can all continue that relationship so that everyone has an opportunity to see and experience more Greyhawk.
No, that's great. Now, speaking of WotC, I have to bring this up because their plans for AI DMs and things like that are, pretty much known at this point. Where do you guys stand in their push to bring things more online and integrate? Obviously the Sigil VTT kind of collapsed, but they want to, their end goal is to try to integrate more artificial intelligence into the play experience. Are you guys following that trend, or are you relying?
No, we have very strict policies in our contracts that there's to be no AI usage, not for writing, not for images, not even for idea inspiration. We hire real people, and we support as many people within our industry as we can with the tools available to us. So I can't speak for WotC, but on our level, we would never embrace those tools.
You made my day saying that, so that's great. What haven't we covered that you guys want to tell us about before we get to what happened this weekend? About the Legends of Greyhawk in general.
We could probably tell you a little bit about Highfolk itself, right, and kind of the tone and the turn, so to speak, right? So we talked a little bit about the Battle of Emerity Meadows being a linchpin moment, right? That to your point, it is 569, but 7 years after, whenever that big event happened and something was different about it, what are the ramifications of that, and how does that Kelvin timeline progress, right? So some of the things that you're going to be familiar with Highfolk are still definitely going to be very much there. You're also going to see some shifts and changes in it that we believe are really compelling, but we're again trying to be very, very respectful for the original material. We're introducing we'll call it a new event, something that didn't happen before in 576, something that was a big deal, but it is an echo of what occurred at the Battle of Emerity Meadows. This carrying forward of that decision, because of that happening, something else happened too soon at the same time. So from a tone perspective, you may be familiar with one form of Highfolk in your mind, or what you've read or written or played, but for us, it is very much more of it's not as colorful and bright a palette, we'll say, a little bit more desaturated. There's a little bit more, it's more frontier, leaning more into frontier, wilderness, survival, isolation. The bad things happened. IUs in the north. You've got the goblins in the north also. There are other things that are going on that are not just those big conflicting elements, right? They're not just the only bad guys that are at play here. There's something else that's stirring too inside of the forest. The Vesvi itself is a character in all of this. And so I noticed somebody mentioned that Highfolk is not a people or a race. You're absolutely right. It's not. It is the region itself. It is the free people of Highfolk, where we're starting to introduce more concepts about like ideologies and about the themes between the country and and civilization, about city versus the city of Highfolk and how the city folk think versus how the country folk think versus how people in the forest think, things like that. And so a lot of those character conflicts that happen in between, those social engagements that happen are built a lot off of those things. So things that may not have been focused on in editions past or in stories past, these are various elements that we're bringing to the fore that are a result of this ripple effect that's happened from those previous events too.
And this is all coming out for those who don't know. They've the folks at Bald Man Games have been running a virtual convention all weekend, set in and around all the Highfolk stuff that they've been talking about. Let's talk about that a little bit. How's what was the scope of it? What just fill us all in. How did it go?
Actually, Matt, I'm going to hand this one off to you. Matt has been the squirrel of the weekend. He has been. I don't know how much sleep you've been able to get this weekend, because he has been so deeply involved in it. Has been such a linchpin member of the team with its one. Why don't you take it from here?
Sure, absolutely. And I want to give a big shout out to the Baldman Games team as well, the virtual team that runs, like this is their kind of clockwork for them, because they do a monthly virtual weekends, and so they not only took their sort of regular game, but like brought their A game to really make this. It is not a sort of monthly Baldman Games virtual D&D weekend. It is essentially an online con. Like, that is the design scope of it. It is meant to be in its own way on par with the MagicCon and Gen Con premieres of the Furyandi and Domain of Greyhawk adventures. And now Highfolk premieres. It's just that Highfolk is at this online con. So that's been the kind of mentality going into it, so that it's on sort of par with the others in that sense. And Highfolk is the region that premieres there. In doing that, we had a heavy focus on actually only Legends of Greyhawk adventures were played at this weekend, and a heavy focus on these three Highfolk adventures that rolled out: A Silent Echo, The Eldritch Inferno, and Trail of Corruption. And they're designed, these are not spoilery things, because I think they're in the blurbs that are out there in the public, but they're basically designed to kind of start walking you through three of the four sort of areas that we think of as part of the Highfolk region. The first adventure is in the city of Highfolk, which we've also sort of, there's debate, I think, in lore about whether it's a free town, free city. So we've actually leaned into that and basically been like, it just promoted itself to be free city, and it's now big enough, and it's
in the gold box, it's a town, but then they did the whole population explosion.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So we basically were like, you know what? This is part of the story, that like Highfolk had a census, and they're like, we are now a free city, because it's a frontier town that wants to grow up. It wants to be on par with, Greyhawk and Divers and everywhere else. So there's a first story.
19th century Denver.
Yes, there we go. Yeah. Denver mixed with like elements of like sort of like, I will not say the American West, because we're not doing frontier in that sense, but like a frontier in that vein that's like up against obviously these other areas. And then the second adventure takes place in what we call the High Vale, or it's known as the High Vale, but we've interpreted that as all the valleys of the region. And then the third adventure takes place in the Vestvi itself. And as John was mentioning, it starts to become very clear that there's like a very important story happening there. Eventually, we will make it to the fourth sort of subset of Highfolk, which we call the Highlands, which is the Klatspur Mountains, Sepia Uplands, and the Yaddles as well. So those three adventures, that was a long explanation, premiered this weekend. And so that launches the Highfolk story, which will then start, again, as Savannah hinted, like we'll sort of bumper up against the other stories as they feed back and forth across the different regions as the results, come about. We wrapped around that a couple of essentially games and puzzles to help people learn about Highfolk and also draw in more folks. Inspired a little bit by like some of the D&D celebrations that Wizards of the Coast did in the past for online events. Like, I was very, very much remembered the Witchlight one, where they had all those games that we rolled out. And so we had a number of things like, give us your magic items that you won in an adventure and we'll give them flavor. We'll have trinket tables of like Highfolk specific trinkets. And then the two big pieces were a riddle of the trees, which uses the 11 trees that are profiled in the original Greyhawk box. And then
still my heart.
And so we've been dripping out profiles of them for the last 2 months in our social media. And so eventually basically like releases this sort of like game that's a puzzle that says, can you figure out the name to the tree as we've drawn them with John's illustrious drawing skills.
Mediocre at best, but thank you very much.
And then like it becomes there's a second level where it forms like a saying for you to figure out. And then there's the other game is like I think it's called a Mud, but basically like a Zork-like game that we organized through the Discord that the event was sort of organized in, which literally was a game where it took you around Highfolk, and there were videos that were embedded into it, and you learned about the region as you were playing in this like 80s style game. And if you won actually the games throughout the course of the weekend, it actually gave you a material reward that you could then use in your games at the tables. So it was a lot, and
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
But it meant to make it an experience, not just like, hey, play some games. It's like, yes, play some games, have a meaningful impact, but also have a lot of fun around it.
So how long does it take to set that up? What's the lead up to something like that?
Oh my God, we've been working on this for 8 months. Well, I'll tell you that much. 8 months, and so part of that is spin up time, right? Like it's Matt and I sitting down and figuring out what the story is going to be for the first 3 adventures, those high level concepts, the 1,000-foot view, putting together some documentation, submitting that for approval, getting feedback from Savannah, from Wizards of the Coast, making sure that the red tape gets taken care of with some of that, and then iterating off of that, and then taking those high level 1 or 2 pagers, expanding them out into something that we can hand off to the authors to actually write out. Right. So here's the story. So the way that I tried to explain it to my family is it's kind of like Kevin Feige in the MCU, right? It's like for good or ill, for some, like however, depending on how you feel about the MCU these days. But here's the overarching story that we want to tell, the specific narrative, and then driving the authors to help them tell that story and get into the fine-tuned bits of it. That took, I would say, what, Matt, 5 to 6 months just to do that part. But at the same time, we're also building artifacts out, Legendarium, some templates, things like that. So we're building things up, project plans, things like that. The weekend at Highfolk part, actually, Matt, I'll go back to you. We've spent, I don't even know how we can count how many hours we put into it, man. Just scores of hours.
Yeah, and we started like in earnest doing that probably about 3 months ago with the Ballmans, like the team there, like to think about what might it be, and then building it out with them from there. And then I would say the promotion itself and kind of kicked into high gear a month and a half ago.
Yeah,
wow. A lot of time.
Yeah,
I lost count, honestly.
I took tomorrow off from work because I'm going to crumble into a little pile of dust. And
I'm going into work anyway. Whee!
And for the record, I liked Fantastic Four in the MCU. So
I enjoyed it. Yeah. But granted, look, MCU hit or miss these days, but
it was anyway. More miss than hit lately.
Yeah,
but
not the best track record since what, since Infinity War.
Infinity War was its
peak,
high point. Well, what was the one after that?
No Way Home.
No,
Endgame.
Spider-Man.
Endgame.
Well, yeah, sorry, Endgame.
Yeah,
I like that. No Way Home.
Although I love No Way Home. Just seeing all 3 of them together like that is like literally cheering the theater. I'm telling you, I will make more of us just talk about the MCU.
If you're not careful, we will talk about Dragonlance the entire time, or we'll veer. I am such a squirrel when it comes to that. So.
John got Kender into this. The word Kender in here. So
the Kender reference did not elude me.
Every time I can.
Now, you guys are doing everything in the 2024 5e rules?
Yes, specifically,
yes. 2024 rules forward. So to play, you only need the new Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Guide.
Okay. Now, are you at all familiar? Because I just did a video on Highfolk, which is what led to this tonight. Because I was approached because you guys had seen it. But I don't know if you're familiar, but I also wrote 3 adventures that take place at Highfolk.
I have seen those adventures. Actually, I only allowed myself to look at them after Matt and I had already submitted all of our adventure ideas. I was trying really hard not to like glean anything from anybody else when we were.
Nothing would make me happier than if you did that. So don't feel like you have to not take my stuff. I will. We could talk about that. But I was wondering how much other stuff, because I know there's a ton of stuff from the old RPGA days that was in Highfolk. how much of that stuff have you looked at for inspiration, or my stuff, or other fan stuff? Because I know there's a whole, Greyhawk in general, and everybody's focused on their own little thing. I've got my own idea of what Highfolk looks like. Everybody does. How broadly have you cast your net in terms of looking for inspiration and collections of lore and that kind of thing?
So I would say generally, there isn't really a limit to where we find inspiration. However, that said, when it comes to living Greyhawk, we have to be very careful because there's right issues. So I always have to tell the team, unless it's in a wizard's book as well, we don't have the right to use it. Right.
Which is such a short-sighted thing on their part way back in the day when they were first setting it up, not to think about the rights issues about their adventures and stuff. I'm assuming you guys have that all settled out, right? This is
only in so much. Yeah, only in so much as to piggyback off of what Savannah said is that unless it's in a book that is written by and published by Wizards of the Coast, we won't consider it. So but we do across between the Living Greyhawk as a tier, the Marklands, all the old AD&D stuff, the modules, all of it's up for grabs, and it's all up for for us to be able to glean from, or to not to reinterpret necessarily, because to me I don't want to get into that. It's like re-extrapolate, right? This thing that happened here in this adventure, how would that have happened based on everything else that we know has happened since the Battle of Emerald Meadows, right? So then that butterfly effect may have caught up at this point. We may pull that in, because again, it's such an incredibly rich tapestry that's already been developed. I don't want to intentionally leave something out of fear of, I don't want to step on canon or whatever somebody else has in their head. But there's so much really great stuff that I want to pull in. But in order to pull it in, there is a natural change that may have to happen based on everything else that came before, these changes that are happening, but the ones that we're putting in. And then you have these forks in the road that we're creating for our players, that their decisions, their what they do in these events and whenever they play these games, they matter. And because they matter, there may be a further splintering from the original chronology or the original canon that occurs.
Right, we're in the TVA now, and everything.
That's exactly. And what we're trying to do is trying to interpret, like, okay, well, if they splintered in this direction, well, that means that this thing happened now, which then causes a cascade effect downstream of things that we need to now reconsider based on other books that are already out there. So,
and Savannah, I believe, if I'm correct, the timeline clicks forward. Like, is it?
That was the question I was going to have. Are you advancing your own timeline year for year, or how's that going to work?
We are, yes. So you'll see, and I mean, it's part of what is necessary in a living campaign. So every year the calendar will tick forward 1 year.
Yep.
I can't wait to see what happens in 2034 when the Greyhawk Wars are supposed to start.
Yeah, right.
Who knows? What Greyhawk Wars?
Yeah, right. Well,
that would make a lot of people happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I heard a wailing sound as of millions of nerds crying out in anguish or in jubilation.
Yeah.
I can't really tell.
And that box is very interesting because it's like you can play the game, and it kind of is like, play this game and make the future be whatever you want. But then at the end, it's like, but here's what really happened.
Right. Yeah.
And they had to obviously to advance the storyline. But I remember like playing it, and then I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, interesting story, but you just told me what. Well,
you get the same thing with Dragonlance. With the War of the Lance, it's the same conundrum. Where there's something that happens canonically in Kryn, but you're playing a game and you're playing these modules, and something Tanis might die in this module. How do you rectify that?
Tell me about it. Yeah. Like if it's the old the meme that you see of Charlie from Always Sunny in South Philadelphia, where he's like he's got this his entire wall is covered with maps and
the conspiracy thing.
Yeah, the conspiracy thing. It was me. Like, okay, well, where was Gold Moon here, and at this time where was so and so there? And I was reaching out to like Dragonlance Nexus and different like other like help me keep from stepping on all this. So it was maddening trying to keep up with all that.
I need to respond to something here. Where was it here? Here we go. John Miller says opines that I should create a Discord server. I just want to let you know I loathe Discord, and that's never going to happen. I'm on Discord for a couple things, begrudgingly, but that's about it. I am not a fan for what I don't know what it is about it. It just irks me. I can't figure out with the different servers and the names. I was born in the last century. Give me a break.
That is the most grognardy thing you've said since you've been on this stream, sir. The most like a Luddite right there.
Well,
I don't like it. Nope.
I don't like it because I'm old.
On the flip side, if someone can get me into Cannon Fire, because my computer keeps like telling me I can't get in, it's like not letting me in. Like, please don't gatekeep me out. I want to know what you know.
No, it's not. It's a clunky website, but it is filled with great information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it really is amazing. There's a couple sites out there that are like that. GreyhawkOnline.net. There's a few things. My own humble offering out there, GreyhawkRagnar.com. So okay, I gotta take this back to something. What was the name of that third adventure you mentioned this weekend, Matt?
Trail of Corruption.
And I do remember you guys saying that this kind of reverberates from what happens in Temple of Elemental Evil.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just speculate based on those two data points that Zuchtmoy has something to do with what's going on here.
We can neither confirm or deny.
You'll have to play.
That's what I do.
We've already talked to our legal counsel, and they've already. I'm sorry. What's that again?
Yeah.
We can neither confirm nor
Don't spill
deny.
the beans.
The Marvel Studios sniper is waiting for you if you say anything out loud.
Sorry, I've learned to zig and zag when I run. It helps.
And the other thing, I'm a huge fan of Igwilv, the Witch Queen, who's obviously, if you're going to be puttering around the Yaddle Mountains and Perrinland and Highfolk, you've got to have already at least considered the impact that Igwilv is having on this. And obviously I don't want you to spoiler anything that's going on, but is that level of lore and detail the kind of thing that you've incorporated into your planning and your legendarium and stuff?
Yeah, I think Igwilf has come up for sure in our conversations before. That's just it. Whenever Matt and I are talking about stuff like this, a lot of it is I have to lean on him because my lore goes in one direction for a specific setting, right? And so in order to keep me grounded, I'm like, what's going on over here? Do we need to consider anything over there? And so my like, well, actually,
that is my entire personality,
and it's amazing. And it's a godsend to have it, right? So it is nothing. Again, nothing's outside of the realm of possibility as it relates to what else is going on. But the story that we have right now may be narrow enough to where you'll have either call outs, callbacks, Easter eggs, etc. to certain things that are like that. And I love that, by the way. I love Easter eggs, even if it's something as small as a trinket that you find that relates to something else within the region that's happened in the past, might happen in the future. It's some kind of a nod for the grognards, right? For the people that know and that have loved the setting for decades now. Be like, I know what that thing is, while all the other whippersnappers at the table are like, oh, it's a cool and little shiny. What are you so worked up about?
But no, it's a coin that dates back to the Imperial era of Kaoland.
Exactly.
How did you not like this?
So in the Discord right now, literally the magic items, people can like ask us, like, tell me the provenance of it. We have a little like character that's basically in a market, and that's like telling them that. And that has been what I've been doing, being like, your rival coin dates back to the times of. So I will also say though that I don't believe that there is a organizer yet who has Perrinland, at least publicly. So John and I basically have made a bit of a land grab to be like, all these Yaddle Mountains and all these things in these Yaddle Mountains belong to us. So we'll see if people
because I've actually
that later.
What I'm speculating on because I did a video on this not too long ago about how to follow up on Temple of Elemental Evil, and I opine that the next step after Temple of Elemental Evil should be Lost Caverns of Sajkant, because that would fit better with the original plan that Gary had, and you can have that because Sajkant is obviously one of the headquarters of Igwilv, and Igwilv being Ayuz's mother, and Ayuz being so prominent in the temple, that's the hook to get people in, because what you're doing is Prince Rommel sends the PCs that rescued him over to the Lost Caverns to stop Ayuz, not Ket, from getting the Demonomicon. Because if you look at the timeline very specially, very, very closely, Ayuz's expansion stops in the same year that Igwil's empire is overthrown. So she was helping him. And then she goes away, he gets stopped. So he wants to get those things to help him expand again. And, this is just complete speculation on my part, but it fits in with all the different things and such. So feel free to use it.
I can neither confirm nor deny any of yours.
Yeah. And then you could keep going from there too. Like, isn't Forgotten Temple, which is also up in that area, I believe sort of hinted at least in its structure, to say, hey, you could follow up Sajkanth with Forgotten Temple.
Well, it's geographically right there. So, they do, they do connect that way. I've always thought that Tharizdun is way overused. He's like a catch-all villain. Everything is Tharizdun. And, like in the Return of the Temple of Elemental Evil, which we mentioned earlier, the Elder Elemental Eye? No, that's just Tharizdun and another. No, stop doing that. Stop being so reductive. You can have two big bad evil guys and still have it work.
Yeah.
But everything is either Vecna or Tharizdun, and it just kills me. Are you at all thinking of, using sort of other minor characters as villains rather than the big three? Is it always going to be Ayuz and Vecna and Tharizdun, or are you looking in other directions?
Oh no, we'll definitely look in other directions. I will say for this first year, our villain is based on the decisions made at the Emerity Meadows. So the big decision point there was the players got to select the villain. And so we're following that storyline to its conclusion currently, but we've got multiple regions. We're going to tap into some things that haven't been explored very much before.
Now, that's a very interesting thing. How does that work mechanically when you say they choose the villain? How does that work?
So in this case, it was basically a census between, I believe, 4 plays of the epic event, and the overall result of what was chosen by the players. So we tally all of the tables in those 4 plays at that premiere event, or sometimes we use the premiere event and then the convention after as well to get more players involved, and then use that. So the big thing is the decision points have to be far enough forward from where they actually start having an impact, that we have time to write the content.
So it's in-game decisions that you're talking about. It's not like
absolutely
you take a poll and you say, "Oh yeah, we want the villain this year to be."
No. It's in game. So it was during the battle. At a critical moment, the players, had to make a decision. And Matt and John have a similar one with Highfolk this weekend that will impact the next Highfolk trilogies. So when we say it's a player-driven campaign, it very much is player-driven. So to help shape the world, you have to partake in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What platform did you use this weekend? What is the general?
Oh, for running games?
Yeah,
like
for running the actual games. Yeah.
Between I think D&D maps on D&D Beyond and Roll20 were the two primary platforms that were used.
Yeah, that's the one thing that really hamstrings me is that I've tried. I have tried to play online, and I just hate it. I don't know what it is. It's just, and it's not even because I'm an old man. Get off my lawn. I genuinely miss the face-to-face interactions and stuff with people, and being able to physically hand a note to someone. There's something about the experience that I think fundamentally changes when you take it away from a table and put it onto online. And I know I'm in the minority.
No,
Zillions of people do that.
I think that I'll just speak for myself, and not Baldwin at all, but like for myself, I completely understand where you're coming from. There is that tactile, that
Yeah.
kinetic, that in person. I see a person's reaction in real time when you're a DM, and you're playing to a group of people that you can't see their faces at all sometimes.
Yeah,
like
that's a good point.
If they don't have their cameras on, it is really hard to read the room, so to speak. And for me, one of the things I try really hard as a DM to do is make sure that everybody at the table is doing something. Their voice is heard. They're being pulled in, so to speak. It's hard to do that whenever you're not at a table and you can see this person on my left hasn't talked in a while. Let me ask them, what do you want to do? Right. So to me, I prefer in-person play, but the reality of the world that we live in these days is that not everybody has access to players and to a play group like we do sometimes, whether it's, sometimes they're in remote places. Sometimes they don't know where to go or where to look to find a good in-person game. Sometimes it's just easier for them to do it online too. And we're also it's very tech driven, Gen Z, kind of like kind of the newer generation. It's easier for them to adapt and assimilate to the technology that's coming out with it too. So, and I've run a lot of virtual tabletop based games, a ton, and I enjoy it. But I definitely do prefer sitting around the table with some friends, drinking Mountain Dew and eating Cheetos and getting Cheeto stains all over my t-shirt kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
But I think it really boils down to like availability. And
I completely get that.
Yeah. And Highfolk's won't only be run virtually. I'm sure there will be like an in-person element to it, or we'll be able to play them there too. And Baldwin Games is the biggest name that there is when it comes to convention play. So, Gen Con, Origins, you name it, like all these the big conventions, that's in-person play where they're running them with real people, real DMs. You're using miniatures and terrain and maps and all that kind of the handouts and all that kind of good stuff. So really, really talented DMs that are doing that kind of stuff too. This is just us making sure that there are kind of like two different ecosystems of play. One is the in-person, one is the virtual, and this is where we're serving the virtual.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a completely personal thing with me. And
sure. I get it.
I which sucks because I'm missing out on a lot of stuff, but I actively dislike it. And it's just me. And I know I'm in the minority. But speaking of it, they recently, just a couple weeks ago, they finished up the virtual Greyhawk Con, which happens every year. Have you guys thought about crossing the streams and maybe doing something as part of that? Maybe next year or the year after, because that's a big hub for the Greyhawk fans.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that would be more of a Dave question.
Yes.
Not here, unfortunately. But I would say there's no avenues closed, and at a certain point, or I believe already, conventions can actually request modules to run through Wizards of the Coast.
Okay. Yeah. Jay Scott would be the person to reach out for virtual Greyhawk Con. He's got a very active Twitch and YouTube and such, so he's definitely and I've been on his live streams a whole bunch, so he's definitely the one of the lights of the Greyhawk fan community. If you were interested in doing that. Let's see. Let me get some input from the chats here. Any questions for the good folks from Baldman Games that we have? We're at the 1 hour mark, and I don't want to keep you up too late, but if there's anything that folks there want, let me know, and we can certainly pitch the questions. So is there anything about your guys' project, whether it's Highfolk specifically or the Greyhawk, Legends of Greyhawk in general, that we haven't covered that you'd like to go over? Have we really been that comprehensive?
I know.
There's a lot. We've covered a considerable amount of ground. Yeah.
Savannah, what's next?
Yeah, what's next?
What's next? So our next premiere event will be Winter Fantasy in February, where Old Ferrand will have a trilogy and epic, which will again be a major decision point. And the Highfolk Adventures will be running there as well. And we do, I believe, I believe the first Highfolk is also available in the December VDDW.
It is.
Yes.
What's that?
So that's the online weekend.
Yeah.
Run by Baldman Games. So they do one monthly.
Oh, the monthly online. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So if you missed it this weekend, you can play it there.
We do have a question from the audience. How many regions of Legends of Greyhawk are they going to make?
That we don't really have an answer to. We know where the regions stand currently, but those decisions are behind another curtain we're not involved in.
Oh, and David brings up a great one here. Will there be an Underdark region? Ho!
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't think we know that yet either. I think that kind of that goes back to Savannah's previous question. That's above my pay grade for sure.
I would think that it would be like part of the region that you're in. If there's an Underdark,
right, it would just be an element of the region that you're in already. Yeah.
But
exactly.
man, can you imagine doing a remember how they did the Free City thing in RPGA? Imagine Errol High Kinlu as a Free City for a living campaign.
Yeah.
Wow. How do we get wait, another one? Blink. How do we get details on these adventures?
So legendsofgreyhawk.com is the best starting point. We have all of the Baldwin Games content on there. The premier or other premier organizers are in the process of getting theirs uploaded, but for now you can click the resource page to see their web pages as well. And that has all of the character building rules, everything you need to get started.
Great.
And has our Discord link as well, our social media links, and any links you need to find the virtual weekends.
Okay. We've got another one. What about Gray Space? This is a great question because I'm not a big Spelljammer fan in general, but I love Gray Space specifically because I think it's a great addition to Greyhawk rather than as a setting unto itself. So like Realm Space and Kryn Space, I think would be, really cool to add on to your thing. And I try to do spelljamming stuff in my Greyhawk campaigns, but I don't see it really all that great as a setting going from thing to thing. But what about it? Do you guys have how does that extend?
We haven't had the opportunity to play with it or consider it because we're locked into the 2024 books. We can't access the Spelljammer content. So it will really depend on if WotC decides to release Spelljammer in the future. And that again is a decision above our pay grade, but I don't think any of us would be opposed to exploring.
Yeah. So that would be a WotC thing, either you guys would go to WotC or WotC would say, "Hey, you want to do this?"
Yeah, well, they would essentially have to release the details of that, right? They would have to have a new supplement or a new book or source book that would detail
with the 2025 rules.
Yeah, exactly what the Spelljammer rules would be, and when that happens, it would probably unlock some things. But again, that's all they make all those decisions.
And when that book comes out, they probably open it up on DM's Guild. Yeah. Because
the other thing that's also interesting about it is like tonally, there's the focus, I think, on making sure that the Legends of Greyhawk sort of stories and settings feels akin to like kind of what Greyhawk like in many ways, is not the Forgotten Realms. When a lot of the Adventurers League work with organized play over the last decade or so was largely based in Forgotten Realms with a couple other like areas around it that has a very Forgotten Realms feel. And I think with the Legends of Greyhawk now coming out, I think the intention is to try to make it feel back to a little bit more of the, medieval times, swords and sorcery
grounded
kind of vibe.
Absolutely.
That would a little bit of that distinction. So, which is not to say that Gray Space, it couldn't go up to Luna and Celine at some point or another, but I think the starting place is anchoring back into that kind of core DNA of what, Greyhawk was presented to be.
I want to circle back to that because that's a whole other conversation I want us to have. But we got another question here. Will Legends of Greyhawk have race restrictions? For example, no Dragonborn or Tieflings or such? Because I know in my 5e Greyhawk books, I actually went through the races and said, yeah, this one's appropriate. This one's not. You could find this one in the Celestial Imperium. how do you guys approach that? Is it just if it's in the player's handbook, it's fair game, or how do you?
So if it's in the player's handbook, it's fair game. We do try and come up with lore reasons to make sense of it in the world. And when new books are released, not everything gets adapted into Legends of Greyhawk. So the organizers at WotC will go through and say, yes, this can be used in Greyhawk. This doesn't fit. So that will be part of the character creation guidelines you'll see on the website. There are definitely restrictions.
Yeah. And that's more character creation driven too, right? So when it comes to the storylines and how we use species in the stories, we get to make the determinations for those. So if it doesn't make sense for Dragonborn to be in the Yaddles, then we won't put Dragonborn in the Yaddles, right? We're not. It's not incumbent upon us to force those to happen. It has to be this organic thing that makes sense, right? In context with everything else that's going on in the regions.
Yeah, for Dragonborn, it's a perfect example. I in my player's guide to Greyhawk, available now on DM's Guild, I put in. I said Dragonborn aren't really appropriate in the Flyness, but if you're in the Celestial Imperium where they have Dragon Isle, or in the Sundered Empire, which was the setting for the 2001 Chainmail game, where they literally have half dragons walking around, it's perfect for that. So, if you had to have a Dragonborn character, you could have somebody who came from one of those places. But no, that actually works out really well. Oh God, we're getting slammed with comments here. Let me catch up. Is Ballband Games going to be making POD books like you did with the Forgotten Realms?
That I don't think any of us have the answer to. It would be very nice. I will say that we would all be happy with it.
I got my fingers crossed behind my back here, people.
If anyone from WotC is watching this.
For sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, the best of all worlds would be for you guys to publish your stuff on DM's Guild, and have it available, because that's, it's the equivalent of a mall, because you get the walk-in traffic. Somebody sees your book at the top of the page, and you're going to get more sales. But that's especially now that Greyhawk is one of the settings that's officially available on there. It seems like a no-brainer, especially since you guys are doing the 2024 rules. I can't publish my old 1E stuff there yet, but we'll see. Okay, so we got that. All right, so I want to circle back, Matt, to what you were saying about the feel, and this for me is a big topic. Is that I think that WotC for a long time felt that Greyhawk was too closely like Forgotten Realms, and that's why they pushed everything. They didn't want to do anything with it. They're like, yeah, we already have a quasi medieval setting. We don't need to. Go away. And I kind of know that from conversations. But what do you feel is the feel of Greyhawk? What makes Greyhawk? What's distinctive about Greyhawk in your minds that makes it distinct from Forgotten Realms or from Kryn or from any other setting?
Matt, I think that was aimed at you. Wanted you to
I was going to say, I don't know.
We're gonna go ahead.
I will give my interpretation of the three things basically, and then I'm going to toss it to the other two. One is basically that element of the sword and sorcery kind of aspect to it, of an element of medieval, more close to medieval kind of
medieval realism kind of.
Yes. And a related element there too is a real emphasis on kind of the story of the individuals that are small incremental heroes, as compared to Forgotten Realms is full of larger than life kind of personalities by design, and
level 28 wizards and stuff walking around handing out
versus so it's that's the classic trope we almost all are so familiar with by this point, which is why do you need me if you have Elminster sitting over there? But so Greyhawk having less of that, and it is the hero story. The third thing I would also say is that that it is not assumed that good will win. or that assume that the sort of the outcome is always the positive one, which I think is also sometimes a little bit implicit in some of the Forgotten Realms stuff. Again, not to dig it, I love the Forgotten Realms, but like Greyhawk
dig
is a
away.
little bit more.
Please dig away at the Forgotten
Yeah.
Realms.
But like, even as you've heard us talk about the design, like things are on the edge of a knife, and like we're going to tell this, if like the players choose or the players' actions have evil succeed, we're going to keep telling that story in that vein. So that's how I kind of read it, as like those three kind of elements that are like a little bit more. But that was, again, just me probably speaking for me, and I'll let Savannah actually speak with the official tone.
No, I would say I echo those ideas a lot. My history of writing in D&D and being a leader in D&D is actually in the Forgotten Realms. You'll see in my background there, I've got a Faerun map and the Moonshae guide.
I loved that book. That Moonshae thing, because back in the late 80s, early 90s, I loved that. That was amazing.
Yeah, so I've worked for 6 years in the Moonshae region and in organized play prior to this. And Forgotten Realms, definitely, you can't turn a corner without bumping into someone with great magic, someone notable, someone legendary, to the point where, problems really seem more surreal. With this campaign, we're trying to really echo I would say the grittiness to swords and sorcery, and also a more low magic feel. So not all of your problems can be solved by the wizard next door. And characters have magic item limits. So even they are kind of grounded in what they would realistically obtain throughout their adventure.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that realism, that grittiness, that's one thing that I can bring to. I have a deep affection for actual medieval history, and what peasantry went through, what feudalism was really like, what was the aristocracy really doing, what was life really like, right? Was it all a lot of stuff in movies you see where everybody's just filthy dirty, completely covered in mud.
Why isn't he covered in mud?
Right, that peasants actually ate really, really well when they did eat, right? Especially farmers and things like that, and especially in comparison to the nobility. Nobility ate this really fatty, gross diet. A lot of the times they didn't want to walk around. There were some kings who were so proud of themselves because they didn't walk anywhere, that the muscles in their legs had atrophied, and that was somehow seen as like it was a flex on the rest of the nobility. They're like, oh, look at how undeveloped my knees are because I never walk. See how people walk for me. So things like that. That really grounded element is something that I love about Greyhawk. And there's some synchronicity between that and some of my other favorite setting of, right, is that we're not going to face off against a Tarrasque every other adventure, or these enormous world shattering events. Things are these localized struggles and troubles that happen where like for Highfolk, again, one of the narrative design elements that we decided to go with is that no one's coming to save you. Yes, we know that Farron is right there, but it's going to take time. You're going to have to deal with this yourself. You're out in the middle of nowhere, you're in the woods, or you're in the frontier. No one's coming. You're going to have to take care of yourself. So that is, instead of being just like teleporting an entire army over here or sending a couple flights of dragons over to go ahead and mop up and take care of all that kind of stuff. Instead, the stakes are high at a local level, but the groups that are going to be summoned or called upon are squishy, right? And so I love that. It's not as gritty as the classic, sword and sandals level of play, right? We still do have magical items that are going to be incorporated into it, but there are limitations to that, where we're trying to keep that power creep focused and narrow, so that whenever adventurers go on an adventure, there's still a good chance that they're going to end up losing. And kind of piggybacking off of what Matt had said specifically is that the whole 1,000 years of darkness because you failed is still on the table, right? And it's very much a possibility, right? That good could fail, evil could triumph. in all of this, and that just depends on our players, if they succeed or if they fail. And at that's kind of what we were talking about this a little bit before the show started, but that failure is really important to a narrative and to a story too. It's okay for them. It is actually okay for the players to fail, because that is compelling in a story too, right? Han was in carbonite, Rocky lost to Apollo, things like that, right? Boromir died, but he saved the hobbits, and so failure is really important too. And when the stakes are high enough and the grit, you're close enough to the dirt, so to speak, then it's that tension is more meaningful in play.
That's a very interesting question, because this brings up, because before we went live, I kind of teased that I was going to do a little OSR versus 5e stuff here. But when you say that failure is important, it really feels to me and a lot of other people that the 2024 5e rules make it hard to fail. You've got all these death saves. You've got all these things to bubble wrap around the characters. It's frankly, the 5e is nerfed now. It's very hard for the players to fail. How do you square that with what you just said about the importance of failure as an option and to drive a narrative tension, which I completely agree with. But in my experience, having written for 5e and played it, especially the new rules, it's hard to fail if you're the players.
Well, you focus less on individual character failure and more on the actual narrative failure. It's not if the cleric drops, we fail, or instead it is we're trying to achieve this, achieve X, and if we don't achieve X, then there is a narrative failure that occurs instead, right? So we focus less on. It's less on like being encounter driven, being more narrative driven. That inside of it, you may beat all the monsters, but you didn't do this thing over here that was really important because you were so focused on trying to keep yourself alive. You can let somebody else over here die, or you let this ritual complete, or you let the bad guy get away, or whatever that is. So that's part of it is less on mechanical failure and more on narrative failure. In addition, though, it's also not pulling punches inside of our encounter creation. Right. And then being able to give DMs the empowerment to ratchet up the difficulty or to reduce the difficulty on the fly as necessary in order to provide a succinct and cohesive level of challenge to the players to where they feel like they've really earned something. And it wasn't just they didn't have just smash the same power button over and over and over again in order to win. I'll let, and of course, Matt and Savannah chime in.
Yeah. I mean, basically, that like failure can be something different than character death. It is very hard to kill a character in 5e, and there are ways people can bring characters back, although it's a lot harder in living Legends of Greyhawk than it is, I think, in some other ways and other organized play. But yeah, if we can't, and we don't want to necessarily aggressively go out and kill people's characters, but we do want to make sure that even if the choices and things that they do, even if they live, still couldn't be sort of failures that they'll then have to live with.
Savannah, I'm gonna toss it to you. Same question about what makes Greyhawk. I know you're not like a big Greyhawk person, but do you have a thought on what elements distinguish Greyhawk from other settings?
For me, it's that more realistic tone, which I think came about as its evolution from war game miniatures and chainmail. Again, it's easier to make things feel more tactical and realistic than Faerun, where there's a magical solution for everyone.
Yeah. I think the way that I tried to explain it to someone once is that it's more Arthurian.
Yes,
it's more of an Arthurian level of fantasy.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I wanted to ask you guys about and forgot was the Knights of the Heart. Are they at all a presence in what you're doing in Highfolk?
That is a great question that I cannot either deny or answer at this time.
They exist. It exists.
Yeah.
That's what we'll say.
Are there plans for it? Maybe, maybe not. Can't say. That is not above my pay grade, but that's not something that we can really divulge at this time.
No, without spoilers.
It's within my pay grade, but I'm saying nay.
Yeah, we're saying no spoilers.
It's in the 3 lock box. So I just at the risk of answering my own question, I would say that one of the things that distinguishes Greyhawk, you guys were all spot on in your observations, but I think one of the things that I tend to think that defines Greyhawk is the concept of balance as a positive force. In the Gord the Rogue novels, that we see that there are literally organizations, the Druids, the Hierophants, the Rosy Cross, Tensor. There are organizations and individuals who are actively promoting balance. If law gets too dominant, they will promote chaos. If evil gets too dominant, they'll promote law, and the reverse. They don't care about, they don't want to see law or good triumph. They want to keep the wheel turning. They want balance to exist in all things as their goal. And I think seeing that to my mind makes Greyhawk different than any other setting, because there's nowhere else where the heroes aren't, they're the lawful goods. They want good, they want to defeat evil and bring goodness and law to the land. In Greyhawk, the real heroes are the ones who want no philosophy to ever dominate completely. They want the wheel to keep turning, and they want balance to be. To my mind, that's a key element of Greyhawk, is that you have these forces that are actively promoting balance rather than it's all about good versus evil and which triumph.
Yeah. You even see that a bit actually in the high, like as John was mentioning earlier, in Highfolk, we've talked a bit about like the tensions. We've made it very explicit, even to the players and DMs, like in this region, you see a balance of city versus country, of progress in the primeval, and also of like the individual and the collective. And like there are people on different ends of them, and they're not necessarily evil and good. They're people who have different views, and they're trying to, how do you figure that out? Like I think it's in, I want to say maybe Greyhawk Wars or one of the books where they're showing like kind of the alignments of the different locations. Highfolk is chaotic, and we're not explicitly making it like chaos.
Yeah, that's
like
in the folio.
chaos.
In the
Yeah,
folio,
right.
they have
There
the
we go.
map
It is
of
the
all the
folio.
things.
Yeah, I remember the symbols very clearly, and like Highfolk is chaotic. I mean, if I remember correctly, because it's not actually like it's that's the whole point. Is like this region resists people trying to come in and organize it and saying for the greater good, you need to all do your thing together. They're like, no, we are our own community. We are our own settlement. And so I think that balance kind of thing is very important, because, and you'll see that in Highfolk contrasted to other places like Yandi and Old Farrand, as well.
And you'll see that theme very much in the domain of Greyhawk, where, a good organization has done a not so good thing in the name of finding balance.
But is it a good organization then? Or is it a neutral organization?
Well, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but
I've been exploring this for years. The metaphysical elements of alignment in D&D. So you this is another one. You could just wind me up and I could talk for an hour about that.
Well, and this goes back to my first love, right? That Dragonlance was all about balance, right? And so this is a philosophical discussion that I've had a lot, right? Like one of the things that I always had a hard time with is like things can be too good. Well, they can be if it becomes fascistic, right? If the people that are in charge and that are the good guys, if they tell everybody that they have to behave in an exact certain way in order to be good, right? So and that's whenever it actually teeters towards evil. It's like at this circuit that completes itself. They veer so far in one direction that comes back around, and it's a snake that eats its own tail. So I see that those are things, those kinds of, like to Matt's point, like this spectrum of ideologies these conflicting ideologies that are happening inside of the Highfolk region in particular are neither good nor evil. They're typically different perspectives on how they view the world that they're in and how they work within, how they live within it, right? To survive versus to thrive, community versus isolation and individualism. It's the old, we have no kings, we need no kings, right? The good-natured ribbing that goes back and forth between Eric Mingy and I about Old Farrand is that Old Farrand's like, hey, well, we'll come up there and take care of you and help out Highfolk anytime you need it. It's like, nope, we're good. We don't need any kings. Thanks so much. We're not part of any of that jazz. We're our own thing.
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people, when they hear words like law and chaos or good and evil, they, in a D&D conception, and I promise I won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but I don't think that the words mean what people think they mean immediately off the top of their head. When they hear chaos, they picture Emrakul the Chaotic,
Right.
just like riding a horse down the street, shooting fireballs off at buildings randomly. It's not that. Chaos just means you're an individualist. That's in the D&D conception. That's really the origin of what chaos is. It's individualism versus law, which is collectivism, which is neither is particularly, bad or good. They're just different ways of looking at life. But it's not, I'm chaotic, I'm just going to start flailing around my arms and running around doing random shit. It's not how that works.
You don't play at my table then, apparently.
I
got most of my players, man. You put chaos anywhere in their alignment, they're gonna bug out, man. Oh no, I've got ways of taking care of at least my players at my table. I do cutscenes whenever they do something like that, like they steal from a kid, and like I've had a buddy of mine, his character pickpocketed a child. I'm like, okay, so then here's what happens after that. Oh yeah, and I'll do a cutscene afterward about poor little Timmy who was going to use that money to save his mother by buying her medicine, and then he couldn't, and now he has an enmity towards the person that stole it from him, and so now Timmy is always after that character. There's a
Charles Dickens novel.
Oh yeah, there's always a morality play in my every single encounter and every single session.
So we have not a question, but something I want to highlight here. A nice comment. Appreciate you all for this conversation and this new Greyhawk content. It's so nice to know that this campaign world I love will continue into the future. So
thank you.
I saw that. I was like, oh, I got it. This is worth highlighting for you guys.
I appreciate it.
So we are at the 90-minute mark or close to. Any closing thoughts that you guys want to give us before we call it a night? Because I know I got to work tomorrow.
I do too.
Unlike Matt.
I'd call him a slacker, but he has not been a slacker at all this week. He's earned that day off for sure.
I'm not even done. I have to do something after this.
Oh, I know.
The event is still going on in the background, actually. So I'll hand it to one of the others.
Yeah, I would just say I hope that everyone loves Legends of Greyhawk and decides to visit the material, whether it's through a con or just observing it online and just experiencing this shared story that we're building, because we'd love to have you all.
Yeah, I'll echo that too. Yeah, if not at a virtual weekend in December, come to Winter Fantasy. Where all of your Greyhawk dreams will come true.
Where's Winter Fantasy?
Winter Fantasy is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it's the first weekend of February. First after the first full week, I think. I'd have to look at the exact dates.
Like the 4th, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. It's amazing though. We call it homecoming because it is it's small enough to where you're not swallowed up by 1,000 other options. It's just D&D. There's some other stuff that's there too. That's other than D&D. We've run Tales from the Loop, DCC, AD&D second edition too. But it's primarily it's D&D, and it's going to be so much Greyhawk content. Pretty much all of the Greyhawk content that we've already got, and then some, will be at it, and it's great. It's easily my favorite con. It is laid back enough to where you can play the crap out of some D&D and have a great time, but then you're going to have a lot of off time to spend with old friends and new to relax and just and fellowship away from the table. And it's also, Fort Wayne is also the land that hates money, by the way.
Yes, it is super cheap for a con.
No, that's a good thing. We do have a question here. Legends of Greyhawk in Europe.
I don't know if they're savvy. I don't know what plans there are for that. I don't know that one.
I know there have been conventions talking with Wizards about running content. I don't know what the status of that is, however. But definitely it's something I personally would like to see, just because we have writers in Europe, in Australia, and Canada, and worldwide, and it would be nice to see their content locally where they are.
Now, there's another potentially touchy subject I need to ask you before we go. There's another living Greyhawk campaign going on right now in the Northeast. that goes to cons and runs games. Are you familiar with this at all? I forget the name of it, but they're at all the cons I go to.
Mhm.
The name is escaping me.
Definitely
know what I'm
familiar
talking
with
about.
it. They're
It's
not a
Greyhawk
so-
Reborn.
Yes,
Greyhawk
Greyhawk
Reborn.
Reborn. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, yeah.
So what? They're just like their own thing, and they're not doing anything. They're not, you have no contact with them. It's just
They're not associated with us, but I'm really happy to see people exploring Greyhawk and continuing the legacy, even if it's not under our umbrella. I think it's very important.
Well, thank you all very much. Greyhawk Reborn. Thank you, Dave. So thank you all very much. This has been a hoot. I'm so glad you guys took time, especially coming off of your Greyhawk weekend. I can't thank you enough. Hope you guys have enjoyed this, and just thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us. We really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having us.
Yeah, been a
Happy to, and please let's keep the lines of communication open. We'll do this again, and when you have another big event coming up or you're opening up a new thing, I would love to have another chat with you guys.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks everybody in the stream. Looks like we have a peak of 25 people viewing right now, and I'm sure a lot more people will be checking it out after we end. So